This is a video from Mike that I missed because it was 5 days ago and I was in the middle of moving, so I was not able to watch it. But it is about how MMOs have made me really toxic, and it's true. Because before I played MMOs, I wasn't toxic at all, and then after I played them, I became just insufferable to be around. So I want to understand why that is, why that's the case. All right, let's see. Let me know if it's too loud or too quiet or anything like that. Okay. You know what's especially made me toxic is Crystal and Conflict. Yeah. Okay.
Nice glam, mate. Where did you get that from? The poor people shop. Don't invite me to your group. I want to join your group if anything. What's your score? What's your score?
You take that back.
What's wrong with you? Have you seen your adventure plate? Do you think that's good, do you? You look like an Echo player. An Echo player. Do you want to look like a Roger Brown? Do you?
You absolutely suck, mate. You suck. Get out of my dungeon.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Guys, wait. Little Sprout's watching the cutscene. I remember my first time. Oh, we'll wait. It's fine.
Oh, is he?
Hey!
Is he?
That adventure plate is amazing. No, it doesn't make you look poor at all. I tell you what, I wish I could make mine look like that. You know what? I just look around and I think, this is what happiness truly is.
Wow. Isn't that completely true though? Like, isn't that how Mike feels about Final Fantasy 14 now? Like, it's like he had this turnaround.
All right, so the social contract is coming to WoW. This is not a WoW bash thing because actually the social contract exists in many games already, but re-emphasize.
Wait a minute, is this going to be a video about how Final Fantasy 14 teaches you how to be a nice person? Because if you read the prohibited activities and you just follow everything that it tells you to do and how to talk to people in the prohibited activities, then you know how to deal with other people after that.
This is something that is done for all the wrong reasons, is my take on this damn thing. What I've noticed, and you guys are well aware, is ever since we stopped actively covering WoW coverage, I have been dipping my toe into as many MMOs as I can get my hands on. Like, in big ones. I'm not doing every single MMO that's ever been made. I'm not playing...
Which means, like, 4 toes in Final Fantasy 14.
or Kitty Island Adventure or anything.
I like Hello Kitty Island Adventure a lot more than this stuff.
But we're looking at a lot of the big ones. Destiny 2, we've been playing some EVE Online, we've been playing...
Why is there a sheep in his office? What's that about?
A lot of Final Fantasy, etc., etc. And one thing has become very clear, and I've tried to make this point in a number of videos, is that it's gameplay design that encourages positive behavior, not a list of stuff that tells you you can't be a racist, bigoted arsehole. That's kind of a given societally, at least for most people, and it's usually something that's done in a sort of ambiguous way. They're never very specific. It's like, it's if you are hate speech, whose definition of that is what, right? Who decides what isn't? Now, for most of us, it's very obvious. If you call someone an overtly racist name or some really homophobic or gendered term, then yeah, you're being a douchebag, and that's clearly obvious. But that line also gets pretty vague. Now, this is similar.
Does it though? Because the thing is that in Final Fantasy 14, like I was saying with the prohibited activities, it is extremely specific. It is like meant to be a guideline for how to interact with other people. It has a lot of examples of stuff you should not say. Like, you can't say... Actually, it's still highlighted from the last time that I looked at this. You can't call someone an idiot, crazy, garbage, or trash. You can't tell someone that they really make a whole lot of mistakes. You can't tell someone your glamour is terrible, you should quit the game. You can't say anything. There's specific things that you absolutely cannot say. So I think Final Fantasy 14 went above and beyond to make this extremely clear for people who were apparently raised in a barn and have no idea how to talk to other people.
And I know it's not on the same topic, to FF14's recent sort of discussion about add-ons, is their purpose is very clear. Like, although it's written with some vagary, their intention is very clear. They don't want FF14 to turn into an add-on fiesta like World of Warcraft. They don't want that.
It's
so they're
super
very
specific,
clearly
though.
trying to say, look, if you're creating some sort of add-on or plugin that makes the game easier, in their opinion, or simplifies it, that's the kind of thing we don't want. But they paint it with a broad brush, which is like, we're just against all add-ons. Right? It's that nature. We talked about that in the last video, is they paint it with that brush so that they can easily toe the line between what they want to get rid of and what they don't. They actually probably don't mind people doing X and Y, and they are just as most video games understand, there's going to be some drama and conflict that occurs in video games where you're playing with multiple people all the time from around the world who are brought up in different cultures and have different ways of thinking, and some people are just complete assholes regardless. Like, that happens all the time as well.
Yeah, I mean, there is always going to be the cultural clashes depending on where you're playing in the world. And that's one of the reasons why the visiting other data centers, like the region visit, has been so controversial and so difficult for Yoshi P to consider implementing. And he himself acknowledged this, that like the way that people interact with each other and play the game in Japan is really different than the way that people in NA or EU interact with each other and play the game. And what in some cases, what one culture would consider to be incredibly disrespectful and rude and wrong, the other culture would see absolutely no problem with. So there is some cases of that, like in handling loot and working together and calling out people for their mistakes. Even if you do it in a nice way, this could be incredibly jarring for someone who is not used to that at all.
So what they don't want to say is, like, you can't say X, Y, and Z, and that has tried in the past. You might remember Twitch did something like this a while ago, where they came up with, like, literally a list of words that you weren't allowed to say. There was a big controversy is that you couldn't use the word blind. Where one of the most common things in all of video games is blind playthroughs. You put that in your title, and that tells everybody, because it's part of the nomenclature of the culture, is that this is somebody who's playing a game for the very first time, and now it has to be
Wow, I completely snoozed on this. I don't remember this happening at all. What was it, 2020? I don't know what I was doing at the time.
playthrough and things like that, and people try and push it, along
I
with a
don't
lot of
remember
other very
hearing this at
derogatory
all.
terms. And when you try and do this very specific line, it makes it awkward, because one thing I know from people, not just gamers, is everyone's always trying to figure out the line. They're trying to figure out, where can I go? Where is it? Where can I push to? And when very strict lines are drawn, that's where it goes. So the TOS thing and there was some...
There's some people who are extremely good at like pushing right to that line, like knowing where the line is and pushing right to the limit where they know they can't get in trouble for that. Is Zai's in the chat? Some people can get away with this. Other people are think that they can do it, and then they fail and they end up making an ass of themselves.
Some outrage about this, but it seemed unnecessary to me. It's really Blizzard reiterating, is like, look, we're probably going to take a stronger stance on this, especially after the lawsuits that are going on and all the controversies. Like, we're going to be more actively taking part in this far too regularly, and this has happened recently with the influencer program, the experts, the WoW expert council, the WoW council thing is, you know, people releasing screenshots that have some racist terms in them, even though X and Y wasn't really involved, but it occurred in their environment, and Blizzard taking action and doing all this kind of stuff, and people going, well, that's not fair, this is all bullshit and all this kind of stuff. And it's really a case that if Blizzard really wants to encourage a positive gaming behavior, there's a couple of approaches that are just considerably better that happen at the design phase of the game, and not really with social contracts, because I'm also seeing a lot of people arguing that, well, this will make things much better now. Now Blizzard has struck down and said, hey, we're not going to allow racism and stuff. It's like, duh. Duh. I mean, I've reported people for racism before, but...
Interesting. I hope that he follows up on this thought that, I know that he will, but that there's things that can be done with the design of the game that will discourage toxicity towards other people. And one thing that I've said for a long time relating to the WoW community is that I do feel like having massively imbalanced specs and jobs in cases where one spec is just straight up not even allowed into, like, it's just not desired, not wanted, where there's a very good chance that you could be rejected from a group because of the poor job design. I think this is something that contributes to negativity among people, and then they take that out on other people. Because I remember playing Shaman in BFA a little bit, attempting to do that. That was a nightmare. But I guess we'll get more on that. He'll probably address this more in a second. But another thing, just off the top of my head, that WoW does that I think is extremely toxic, that breeds toxicity, is that, and there, I mean, you can see how it does benefit the group leader where you put up your party finder group, and instead of just the first person who sees that you have an availability for that class joins, like it works in Final Fantasy 14, instead the group leader will see a list of people applying to join their group with their item level, and so obviously they're going to they can pick and choose which person they would like to join, and they will probably pick the person that has the best item level, and then all these other people who are likely newer players, less geared, they're going to get a message that says you've been rejected. And this can happen over and over and over and over and over for someone. We're like, you have to imagine like how that feels for someone psychologically who it keeps applying to different groups and they keep getting a message, you've been rejected from their group, you've been rejected from their. I feel like for some people who like take that really personally, not able to see well that you know, it's in the group leader's best interest. It's not personal. That might wear people down somewhat and cause them to lash out or become more negative and more bitter.
Ironically, there was a video I did during the Shadowlands Alpha where I did report somebody who was being a complete toolbox. And a lot of people in my comments section said I was being a snitch, a grass, a pussy.
Oh my
all those
God.
kind of things. I'm like,
dude, I had this happen. I actually had this happen and I still get shit for it sometimes. Like one time, somebody was like legit harassing me in the chat and being extremely rude to the point where I felt I needed to report. I normally do not report unless I feel like this person absolutely crossed a line and I don't want this to happen to other people. And I think one time I reported somebody on stream and I still, well, not so much anymore, but for a long time I had people say, oh my God, are you that streamer that reported people on stream? I'm like, well, yeah. If you
this could be a
harassing me,
kid,
then I'm gonna
right?
report.
This is going to be a kid who's having to listen to this shit. Like, that's not funny. That's not a joke. And you can call me an old man boomer, whatever, but I look at it from that perspective. It's like, this could
Mike's
be
not
one
a
of my
boomer,
kids who's
is
having to
he?
listen to this bellend, talking all this shit and saying all this awful stuff, which he's not allowed to hear at home. And yeah, I don't think it's right. Whatever. I don't think it's right, and I'm not going to fucking stand for it. I don't care if you call me a pussy, whatever. And thankfully, Blizzard reached out to me afterwards and like, thanks for that. That was good. Make that example. And I was like, I wasn't trying to make an example, and just I would do that regardless if I was recording this or not. What I do want to talk about though is the ways that we can certainly create a better environment.
I feel like the people who get mad that you reported someone publicly are people who are doing stuff in the game that's reportable. Because they're like, there's no way that you would see that as a threat to yourself unless you're like, oh shit, this streamer is letting everybody know that you can report people for harassment. That's not good news for me because I love harassing people. You know what I mean?
Ultimately, there's a lot of people who consider WoW to be very toxic right now, which sucks because Dragonflight is hopefully going to be really good, and we don't want to leave that toxic atmosphere stewing, but it needs to change in different ways. FF14 is considered all sunshine and roses and happiness. Unquestionably, radically different social environment. Radically different. I'm not undermining how massively different the environment is. It is not perfect.
Well, obviously.
There are certain social faux pas that exist in FF14
Wait,
that
it's
people
me. Hey, that's my character.
take extremely seriously.
Yeah,
and a simple one would be if you have a new player in your dungeon and they're watching a cutscene for the first time, it is very, very respectful to let them watch it till the end.
You better
and
watch.
if
You better
you
let
pull-
them watch
What
it.
you can do is if you've already seen that cutscene before, so you've played the story and you're replaying this dungeon for leveling purposes or
not.
whatever,
Hey, that's a bun in his party. How nice.
is you can go and pull the boss straight away while the cutscene's playing. Some of these
Better not.
cutscenes are 2 or 3 minutes long. And that person is just not going to take part in the boss fight. The boss fights aren't difficult, so it can be 3-manned or whatever. And that person comes back after maybe watching a very important part of the story. People take the story very seriously in FF14, and the boss is nearly dead. Or it's like, I'm locked out of the room, or whatever it might be. And it's considered a really big social faux pas. Now,
Yeah.
as well as not commending people at the ends of dungeons. And this is what leads me to the gameplay scenario.
Really?
There are gameplay encouragements that work.
So, I didn't know. Is it rude to not commend people at the end? Because sometimes I just straight up forget. But I have seen cases where people create a macro that's like, hi, thank you for, or it's like, I hope you enjoyed this dungeon experience with me today. If you did, please consider leaving a commendation for me. Like, I've seen this happen more than once in a random group. You just pop that macro right at the end. Would you do it? If somebody popped the macro that's asking you to commend them, would you do it? Is it cringe or would you do it, chat? Please like, share, and subscribe.
Some games don't bother at all, which is another approach that people can take. So I would consider Destiny 2 to be more in line with that, which is that you can go into a strike or whatever outside of very, very organized raid content, and if there's people there, great. If there's not, there isn't. They're faceless, nameless for the most part. Very rarely you're going to bump into them again. It's essentially this mission can be soloed, and if other people are also doing it at the same time, then they're there too. And that's about it. Now that works, but it's kind of the hands-off approach and doesn't really foster a great community.
I'm just watching the gamer focus here on his camera. He's like laser focused.
Feel, which is where I think FF did get things right, and I hope WoW looks at it this way. I think the best example is honestly Mythic Plus. Mythic Plus is a very hard experience for the average player to get a positive experience with. Years ago, I would have said something similar to what you'd read on many forums when people struggle with Mythic Plus is make your own group. And the more I think about it now I'm detached from that world and looking back on it, it's like, wow, that's actually really shitty advice.
Yeah, because I guess as becoming a new player in Final Fantasy 14, it gives you a new perspective of what it's like to be a new player again. And like how difficult it is where you don't know anybody. You don't have any connections to people unless you're lucky enough to have actually joined the game where you know people, which is not, I don't think that's the majority of cases where like, just saying, oh, just put a group together, just go with your guild, just join a good guild. Like these are suggestions that sound like insurmountable obstacles for someone who's new to the game. And, so yeah, it's not quite that easy. It's better to maybe try to, I don't know. I always said it's better to try to encourage people to be nicer in the Mythic Plus. That's not going to happen. Like I had probably my most toxic experiences that I ever had in World of Warcraft in years and years and years of play was for Mythic Plus. And I almost feel like it is so broken and so bad at this point that there's nothing that could be done about it. But maybe Mike has a good idea what can be done because, I don't think like even any game that I ever played, except maybe an Overwatch match that was going really bad, except it's like that in the beginning. You have this feeling, this vibe of hostility at the very start, before anything has even happened yet. Everybody's just barely tolerating each other and like hoping we can all get through it. And God help you if you pull an extra mob that you weren't supposed to pull.
That's like terrible advice. Yeah, you can get a group together, but the problem is you're putting your key up on the chopping block. And this is what then fosters the negative environment of individually scrutinizing every single player that you're going to be dealing with. It encourages that play. And then Blizzard doubles down on it because now we have the rated.io score in-game as well. And the reason it does that is you're putting your key up for chopping. And if this key fails, it's your key that suffers. And your loot that suffers, and all these kind of things. So, of course, you're being encouraged to really heavily scrutinize and take the best of the best of the best possible, as best as you can tell. Which then...
Okay, I see where he's going now, talking about how the game design can feed into...
Heavily. Undermines all the other players who just want to get their dungeon done and are probably really average to good players, if not amazing players. There's always some bad ones in there. But they're heavily pushed out of the scene because of the environment around how the game works. It's designed to not reward failure too well. It used to do that. It used to do that in several ways. I remember even back in vanilla when average BG started rewarding high warlord gear, although enough points to buy them, and people were really upset. Now, that was part of an exclusivity situation, but you can now see, if you think about it, is Mythic Plus, if it goes wrong, it's not going to increase your score. Let's say you're farming score. It doesn't increase your score anymore. It's all going wrong. People are leaving. And we've all seen those threads, if you've paid any attention, of people basically calling for the abject...
So is he suggesting that maybe there should be some other like consolation prizes to make people still happy that they participated even though it went really bad?
Murder, hanging, and disembowelment of anybody who leaves a Mythic Plus dungeon. And leaves your key high and dry. And that's because it's a very negative effect of putting yourself out there and try to get in a group. Much safer to just keep rolling and rolling for hours and hours until somebody else lets you in and you get a lesser negative impact. But if the group falls apart, you still get a very negative impact. It's a gameplay situation that's creating this environment, which leads to gear score, which leads to having rated.io score and all those things. Because the gameplay intuitively gives that. Vice versa, On the other side, like some of the things we've talked about before is their endgame zone Bosia, which fully encourages audience participation and cheering on people to do well. You get rewarded for that, for taking part in that situation. In dungeons, if you have a new player, like I talked about before,
I'm thinking like, but there was something that he mentioned a second ago that I wanted to comment on here. Hold on. I have ADHD. It's very hard for me to pick up my train of thought that I had just a second
for hours and hours until somebody else lets you in, and you get a lesser negative impact. But if the group falls apart, you still get a very negative impact. It's a gameplay situation that's creating this environment, which leads to gear score, which leads to having...
Okay, yeah, I think what I wanted to say was that at the core of this, at the design foundation of this is like... Thinking from a Final Fantasy 14 perspective, Final Fantasy 14 is built from the ground up with a core idea of your time will be valued and respected by the game mechanics. Like the effort that you put into pursuing a piece of content, it will be rewarded in some way. You're never going to walk away feeling like you completely wasted your time. Or if you did, it's extremely rare cases. If you look at something like a mount farm from an extreme trial, you will still be getting totems every time. If you look at your savage raids, where maybe you won't win any loot, but you still get your book every time you clear that every week, so that you never walk away feeling like you wasted time. And that's baked into every single system that is designed in Final Fantasy 14. But I think in WoW, it's pretty much a non-factor.
Rated IO score and all those things, because the gameplay intuitively gives that. Vice versa, on the other side, like some of the things we've talked about before is their endgame zone Bosia, which fully encourages audience participation and cheering on people to do well. You get rewarded for that, for taking part in that situation. In dungeons, if you have a new player, like I talked about before, they will reward you with more stuff. A big message appears as soon as you enter that dungeon saying, hey, there's a guy here who hasn't done this dungeon before. We're going to give you more rewards. Be respectful of their time. Let them watch the cutscene.
Wow, can you imagine if they put that in Mythic Plus? But then, like, people would make extra characters just to get the loot. But I was imagining, like, imagine if you went to Mythic Plus and it's like, hey, we got somebody here who has never done Mythic Plus 15. You got some
this is the kind
loot.
of thing that's beneficial. You get the commendation system at the end, which is polite, and most people do this, is give a commendation at the end. Who did well there? That then encourages them to build up their personal commendations so maybe they can help others. It encourages people to be helpful. When people are stuck, people are clearly not understanding what's happening in the dungeon, they're failing things, it helps you to go, hey man, this mechanic that you failed on, like, say you got Doom. So what you need to do is you need to run on the glowing platform, and that'll get rid of the Doom debuff so you won't die. It's like, oh, okay. And then that person might commend them for that. Now, obviously, there's the Mentor situation in FF14, because not every solution...
Now, what do you think about the endorsements system in Overwatch? Because this always seemed like commendations 2.0. And I don't know if it's in Overwatch 2. I haven't really been paying that much attention to Overwatch 2. But, like, instead of just a random commendation, to be able to give, like, the specific compliment for something that they did. Like, you were a leader, or you were a good teammate, or you were positive and respectful. You know what I mean? Like, do you think that would be better than just the standard commendation that we have now? Or if you did, if you were liked, if you were the cutest person in the dungeon, if you happen to be the bunny boy in the dungeon that I was in, then you get the commendation, you know what I mean?
Solution is perfect, where people are being overly helpful. That's a problem as well, but I think I would rather have people be overly helpful than actively hating against each other and creating environments that lead to conflict. And I think that's what it ultimately boils down to, is if they really want to solve the toxicity stuff over in WoW, which is prevalent, there's no getting away from it. I don't run into it a lot. I don't think it's as widespread as people feel it is. Of the years that I did the TDP, where we were running Mythic Plus day in, day out, very, very rarely did I have a negative experience. Wait!
But are you not having a negative experience when you are on a character that people know belongs to you, Mike, of Preach Gaming? Like, that's the immediate question that comes to my mind, because if someone knows that it's you, obviously that might change the way that they interact around you.
Why? It's on the other side of the room, bro! Why? What are you achieving?
This is
Ah!
oh my god, so much
God!
suffering.
How do I play this? It's fucking killing me.
What am I pressing?
It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter.
Without a damage meter.
Oh
But-
my god.
At the same time, 99% of my dungeons were successful and everything was fine because I know I'm carrying my weight for the most part and usually other people are as well. So it generally worked out pretty well. But there are obviously groups out there with a lot of
Wait,
average to lower average players joining groups that are struggling and then they're being excluded from further content. And there's
was that him on Hunter? Yeah, I remember he ended up having to play Hunter.
lower average players joining
No,
groups.
I think he's not that hot on pet
That are
classes.
struggling and then they're being excluded from further content. And there's really no incentive, like I just talked about, to try and encourage them in some way to get better or to learn and get better without being an offensive intruder into your personal space of going through the talent list. Like, this is shit, this is shit, this is dog shit, you know, this is bad, what you're doing is bad, your rotation is terrible, just read a guide, lol. All this kind of stuff. The gameplay of the systems in the game don't encourage that positive gameplay. And that's what I would really like to see. If Blizzard is taking a proper stand against the toxicity in the game, and I'm fully encouraging them doing that, what I would really like
Are
to
they
see
doing that
is
though?
be
Like-
respectful of people's time.
Are they
The
going to
biggest
do that?
one. It's one of the biggest reasons that I don't miss WoW right now, and I'm
Yeah,
hoping
that's what I brought up. That's why I think is the core design difference
Changes in
between these
Dragonflight
games.
talks about this a lot on Allcraft with
But seriously, did they even say that they want to help alleviate this problem in their game with toxic people or not?
Osmond and Rich is I want to be respectful
They are
of my time.
pledging.
If I think about the amount of times that I've run Mythic Plus, and I will use that as the prime example rather than raiding here, I'm looking for an item, and you know, you're doing 30, 40 runs, and I know when I was talking to OK Mage at the recent Race to World First, it's like she ran the same dungeon 200 times over the course of a season and still didn't get the item she wanted. Like, utterly ridiculous. Having to do
Ooh.
10 vaults to end up with a pittance of currency at the end because none of the items it gave you. It's like, be respectful of players' time because it creates, if you don't, it naturally creates frustration. It naturally creates frustration. I've wasted all my time. I did 9 hours of dungeons and raids and Mythic Plus or whatever it might be in PvP, and I got nothing for it. I got absolutely nothing for it. It's just not respectful of my time. And there's games out there like PoE's just the season's new season just launched. It's like 400 hours of gameplay for free. It is.
I haven't
like,
played
I know
PoE
people
at all. Do you think I would like it?
go, oh, but you might buy stash tabs and things. It's like, yeah, but you really don't need to. I played for 150 hours without ever doing so. And the only reason I did is because people were like, you really should. But I was fine. Like, I could continue to play that game for free all the time. And it's those choices are out there. I really hope they do something about the toxicity over there, because right now that's the impression a lot of people have, like League of Legends had and still carries. Is that game is really toxic. And it's not just the solution to just outright ban people, it's to foster a gameplay environment that doesn't encourage it. So I'd love to see your thoughts on this, guys. I really would, because honestly, reading through it, it's like, this is good, but it's not going to change the fact that your environment fosters negativity. And if you want a good gameplay experience, because the MMOs are built on the back, let's face it, of people having a good time in a community. And if you can encourage that and push it forward, that's the win. That's the win-win for everybody. So let me know what you guys think. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Well, I do think that having the perception that your MMO has a toxic environment is a problem that makes it's like a problem that feeds into itself, because even if people are kind of trying and then they do encounter that one person or maybe multiple people that is a huge dick to them, then they think, oh, well, that's what I heard about this game. Everybody's toxic in this game, so why should I even try? And there are people that really will come to that conclusion. And having on the flip side, you know, having the perception that the community is positive might make people come in with a different set of expectations for themselves. Like, oh, well, everybody's nice to each other in this game, so maybe I should get my shit together. Like, maybe I should be a little nicer. Oh, I heard that that the GMs actually enforce the harassment policy, so maybe I should Like, and also that is a factor. How consistently is harassment policy enforced? Do the GMs actually do anything when someone complains about someone who is repeatedly harassing other people? Because nine times out of 10, the person who's doing this it's not the first time. Like they do it all the time.